back to birding on the Canary Islands, an amazing archipelago just off Morocco in northwest Africa. Made up of 7 islands, the Canary Islands are a fantastic birding destination, offering a mix of endemic species, Micronesian specialities, and even some African influences. Each island has its own unique habitats, ranging from the lush laurel forests of La Gomera to the arid semi-deserts of Fuerteventura. In this series, we'll be visiting just 2 of the main islands, Fuerteventura and Tenerife. In part 1, you saw us visiting the central eastern coastline, and then move inland to bird in the highlands around Korea, seeing the most amazing birds and getting several lifers in the process. So if you haven't already seen part 1, please do go take a look. In part 2, we leave the highlands behind us and move north towards the vast plains of Tindaya and the rugged coastline around Cotillo. You catch up with us early one morning as we drive out of Korea.
Start of our 3rd day. We're just driving out of Korea, which is down the bottom there. Nice little viewpoint as you drive out of the valley. Just had point blank views of Berthelot's pipit here. I ran back to the car, and of course when I got back it had flown. Jake's on the other side busy photographing them. Obligatory ravens. They're everywhere.
This is an amazing view looking north towards the Tindaya Plains from the Guys and Ayus viewpoint, named after 2 former kings of Fuerteventura, immortalized in bronze statues at the lookout. Our first stop of the day was the Los Molinos reservoir. The dam was built in the Barranca de los Molinos in the 1940s during the Franco dictatorship to address water scarcity, but its salty water made it unsuitable for irrigation. The largest body of inland water on Fuerteventura, which attracts a wide variety of species, including ducks and waders. There's a small hide 2/3 of the way down the eastern side of the dam, and contrary to the amount of water you see here, we arrived to a very different looking reservoir. After turning off the main road onto a dirt one, you enter what looks like a lunar landscape, with not a tree in sight for miles around. As you drive towards the reservoir, scan both sides of the track. We found this lone ruddy shell duck literally in the middle of nowhere, quite happy in this barren landscape.
Disappeared. Do you see where that little bit of veg is?
Yeah.
There's one. Yeah, they're large.
We then stumbled across a sizable flock of Mediterranean short-toed lark, feeding on the western side of the road, made up of 2 endemic subspecies in the Canaries, although the Tenerife bird is now thought to be lost. It's a common and widespread resident breeder in the drier eastern islands and doesn't occur on the western islands at all. The species as a whole has a massive range, extending from the Canaries into the Iberian Peninsula, across North Africa and into the Middle East and a bit beyond. It can be distinguished from the greater short-toed lark, which also periodically occurs on the island, in the fact that its breast is more streaked and is overall darker with a shorter, less conical bill and a more rounded head. It likes open grassland and semi-deserts, preferring even drier and barer soils than the greater short-toed lark. It nests on the ground, laying 2 to 3 eggs, and feeds on seeds and insects, the latter especially during the breeding season.
That flock must be like 50. Yeah. Lifer! We're just driving along the track to see if we can get closer views of around 50 Mediterranean short-toed lark. She's just flown down there somewhere. We initially only had about 5 or 6 birds, and then the whole flock flew off, so quite a large flock. So it's nice to see in here. They're just down here somewhere, and luckily there's a place to pull over as well, so it's good. I'm surprised none of the logs are on the actual road.
Driving up to the reservoir, we were in for a bit of a shock because we were expecting a partially or even full reservoir at this time of year.
Come to the reservoir, but there's not much water in the reservoir. It's pretty much dried up, but we're going to take a walk down to that little muddy patch down there and have a look. No swift swallows either. Spanish sparrows, huh?
Yeah. I don't think there's anything on that pool.
So Jake's just picked up 2 flying sandgrouse. Not quite the views I had in mind. I'm sure we'll get more along the way. There's our first of the trip there. We think it's a little ring plover that's just working near bank here. And there's a couple of ruddy-shelled duck in the far back end of the reservoir.
Little ring plover is a resident breeder in small numbers across Tenerife, Gran Canaria and Fuerteventura. It prefers the fringes of freshwater man-made reservoirs and dams, although they also use salt pans. Similar to ring plovers, but smaller, slimmer and with shorter pale pink legs. They have pale eye rings and all dark bills.
We're just hearing more sandgrass out here. Don't know if you can hear they're calling out here as well. I think the chance of us finding them anywhere near here is slim to none.
Videography was a bit challenging here because everything was quite distant and the waders tiny. One local told us they hadn't seen the reservoir so low in years, so it must have been a very poor rainfall year.
Can still hear the sandgrass. I think those sandgrass are actually calling from across there as well. Common sand. So unfortunately there's not a lot of water, so we've only had little ring plover, ruddy shelduck, common sand, and then of course grouse calling, which we haven't got eyes on yet. Hardly any wind, and it's getting quite warm. There's about 20 ruddy shelduck in the flats here as well. Lots of ring plover and little ring plover down the bottom there, around those ruddy shelduck. Just going to go and see if we can get inside down the bottom here. There's absolutely no cover, so I'm surprised we don't flush everything ruddy shelducks are taken off before you get to the hide. There's literally not a tree to be seen. Can you imagine this place during the summer heat?
Yeah. Set a scope up before.
Two green sands are nicely together there.
Green sandpipers are a regular passage migrant and winter visitor in small numbers across all the Canary Islands, showing a distinct preference for fresh water, similar looking to common sandpipers, but are larger and darker and lack the white gap between the neck and the top of the closed wing. In flight they show a white rump above a broadly banded tail.
No, no, yeah. I think a trumpeter finch just went past.
Yeah.
Yeah. There. Got it.
And you know what I can hear?
Where is it? There.
It's got nesting material.
Leaving the reservoir behind us, we followed the barranco towards the ocean, visiting the small rural village of Lepaklas along the way. The site had a few e-bird hits in the small holdings that make up this little agricultural settlement, so we decided to go take a quick look. Here we found a pair of great grey shrike guarding the entrance to the village. It's an endemic subspecies to the Canaries, found mostly on the drier eastern islands, and gets scarcer the more westerly you go. We hadn't even made it into the village when Jake pointed out some stone curlews right beside the road. If you look carefully, you'll see 3 birds in the shot. Sadly, our arrival coincided with the gardener starting his morning work in the small garden the birds were sitting in, immediately flushing them further away into a nearby field, so we only had seconds to capture this footage for you.
Jake just picked up 2 stone curlew under that palm in the background, but unfortunately this gardener flushed them. But they've just flown to the back here now. You're just in there, 3 of them. Quite nice. They were under this palm here.
Stone curlew are a widespread and locally common breeder across the Canaries, but more so on the drier eastern islands. Yet another endemic subspecies of the Canaries, this extremely well camouflaged wader is crepuscular, being most active during the dawn and dusk hours, during which time they can be quite vocal. Driving out of Lapaklas, we followed the barranco eastwards again to where it meets the ocean, to visit the famous little hamlet of Los Molinos. Nestled between the sea cliffs and the crashing Atlantic Ocean, we were going to spend a few hours exploring the barranco and rocky beach and having a bite to eat.
Right, we are now at Los Molinos, which is Muscovy duck heaven. Look at Jake, he's happy as Larry, in amongst the Muscovies. And Kentucky Fried Chicken. What we'll do, we'll take a walk up a little bit and see what we can see. Just have a little egret drop in there, and we've got a common sand at the back of the little stream here.
Common sandpipers are a common passage migrant and winter visitor to the Canaries, inhabiting both rocky and sandy shores, and like here, freshwater barrancos. The most distinguishing feature of this little wader is the white gap between the brown of the neck and the top of the closed wing, easily recognizable even at distance.
And obligatory Muscovies. The little egret is new for the trip list. Just had another common sand flying around the corner there. So a few Berthelot's pipits knocking about. Berthelot's in a little white stone there in the water.
The Berthelot pipit is a near endemic to the Canaries, occurring on Madeira too. It's common and widespread on all the islands and favors drier, open, uncultivated areas, so is more abundant on the drier eastern islands. You'll find a pair at just about every stop you make, easily picked out by its loud, sharp call.
Okay, I won't go any further because this footpath is closed from February the 15th to July the 31st, potentially due to Egyptian vulture breeding site in there somewhere. We can just turn around. We're just going to go and have a look at the beach now, see if there's anything on the shoreline. Shoreline's rocky, not sandy. Maybe there'll be something there to have a look at.
Returning to the beach, we found the sunbathing male Fuerteventura chat distantly on the far side of the barranco. Not as numerous as I thought they'd be on the islands, but once found can be quite confiding, as most chats are, sitting proud while scanning their territories. They look very much like washed out stone chats. Also on our return, we bumped into a feeding pair of spectacle warblers. This pair were feeding young, returning to the same spot with food in their beaks. And finally, a flyover raven.
Okay, we've just come back from our little walk. Just going to go up here, check it out, and then jump in the car and head north. We've got 3 nights accommodation very close to the Tindaya plains so that we can hit those every morning nice and early. So we're currently here and we are spending the next couple of nights around this area here so we can hit the plains early morning. That's the next couple of days. 3 possible lifers on the plains for me: the Bustard, sandgrass and the Corsa. We don't need stone curly anymore, we got that coming in here, so that frees that one up. But of course, if there's better views, I'm still going to look. Oh, nice quaint little fishing village. I'm very surprised there's not many more raptors, like kestrels or peregrines, even though this is like fantastic habitat for them. That gorge is amazing for raptors, but I suppose the food sources are not around, so the birds aren't here. We did think we heard a kestrel calling further up the gorge, but of course we couldn't go because it was closed. Look. Just a female Fuerteventura chat on the end of this wooden slatted fence line. It's hunting around the bins here and flying backwards and forwards. Just sat on the corner there.
This is where I had my best ever views of this chat. Ignoring the weird looks from visiting tourists nearby, I used the bins as cover to creep up to within meters of this chat, happily feeding off flies attracted by the smells coming from the bins. By the amount of feces on the edge of the post, I think these birds have been hunting from here for some time. Initially I had the female picking off flies, but she was soon replaced by a male bird who showed point blank, ignoring me while gorging on the abundance of insects visiting the bins. The Fuerteventura chat is an endemic bird to the Canaries, and in fact only occurs on Fuerteventura, hence its name, but birds occasionally pop up on nearby Lanzarote too. Widespread on the island, inhabiting scrubby hillsides, barrancos and the edges of farmland. We found this bird to be quite scarce though, only finding about 3 or 4 pairs the entire trip.
Jake's found some new friends. One's distracting him while the other one mugs him from behind. and
After having our fill of Muscovy ducks and a bite to eat, we were soon on our way to the jewel in the crown of birding on the Canary Islands, the famous vast open plains of Tindaya. Lying to the west of Mount Tindaya, the sacred 400-meter high guardian of the plains, the plains stretch out for several kilometers westwards, ending sharply in the Atlantic Ocean. It's a barren, windswept landscape formed by volcanic activity and eroded over millions of years. But despite its barren appearance, the plains support some of the best wildlife the Canaries have to offer. I love birding in the desert, so I was absolutely loving it. Stopping in Tefia to admire one of the traditional windmills in the area, one of about 23 windmills declared as an asset of cultural interest, dating back to the 19th century, reflecting Fuerteventura's cereal-based agricultural past. The small village of Tindaya is the starting point for most people exploring the area. It's also where most tarred roads end. We made a point of visiting the animal enclosures around the village in the hopes of seeing sandgrouse feeding on spilled grain, but sadly both the animals and the grouse were nowhere to be seen. And then onto the plains themselves. It was around midday, so we weren't expecting to see much, but we couldn't help ourselves but take a look.
Okay, we've just arrived in Tindaya, and we've just gone for a little drive out onto the plains to see what we can see. We've visited the animal enclosure, but there's absolutely nothing there, so we thought we'd just take a drive out, see if we can find anything. And it's starkly beautiful, actually, but not a whole lot to see bird-wise at the minute. I think that's Mount Tindaya there. That one there.
The first bird we found on the plains was this typically wary Barbary partridge that bolted the minute we pulled up. We then had an Egyptian vulture circle over and land distantly from the car, which was soon joined by another. These vultures are white with black flight feathers, but in areas with mud or iron-rich soil can look rusty in color, a trait shared with bearded vultures, which suggests a liking for cosmetic coloration.
Okay, first of the plains specialities has fallen, cream-coloured courser. Unfortunately, it's very distant in the back there, about 150 metres out. I'll pop up a picture or two for you. So that just leaves us the Bustard and the sandgrouse.
A major bird for our trip list and a lifer for me. Cream-coloured coursers are a widespread breeder on the dry islands of Fuerteventura and Lanzarote, and only occasionally on Tenerife. They typically occur in the same habitat as Habara bustards, preferring wide open dry plains, where it hunts for insects, dipping its head like all coursers do and running at high speed. Highly nomadic, these birds can cover large distances while feeding, and lay their eggs in a scrape on the ground, breeding early in the year, often having chicks as early as February, although we visited in late Feb, early March and didn't see any on this trip. The species as a whole are found on the Canary Islands, Cape Verde, North Africa and into Southwest Asia. We were blown away by the views we were currently having of this beautiful wader, but little did we know we would soon have frame-filling views in the days to come.
Just got a strike out there. Left-hand rock there. Miles away for you, unfortunately.
Kestrels on the Canaries are another endemic subspecies. Birds breeding on the eastern islands are smaller and paler than those everywhere else on the Canaries.
Quick little pit stop while we're driving around. Just having a quick bite to eat. Stretch the legs. Starkly beautiful out here.
After not finding much more out on the plains, we're headed to its northern edge and into the Barranca de Esquinzo. Here the vegetation and habitat changes sharply, where we hope we'd find something to keep us entertained until the late afternoon when the bustards would be more active again. We spent a little while looking around, but only found a lone great grey shrike, a raven's nest, a trumpeter finch pair, and a group of Spanish sparrows, so turned around and headed back to the plains. Most of the roads around the Tindaya plains are well-maintained gravel roads, with one tarred road running northwest from the village itself, and funnily enough, this tarred road is the worst road we were on the whole of Fuerteventura. It's heavily potholed, but because you drive incredibly slowly anyway, it doesn't really slow you down, so we drove this road quite a few times. The best time to look for Habara bustards are early morning and late afternoon. During the heat of the day they simply disappear on you, probably just sat down somewhere, but because they're so camouflaged they might as well be right next to the road and you wouldn't see them. But come later in the afternoon, all the action starts up again.
Just got a bustard just on the right hand side of that little shrub there. Yeah, it's coming on. Look at that, unreal. Just got this lovely male Habara bustard out on the plains after driving most of the day. Just round about there.
The Habara bustard occurs on both Fuerteventura and Lanzarote, making them the only European population of this endangered bustard, and is a protected bird in the Canaries. where less than 600 individuals are under threat from landscape changes associated with socio-economic development occurring on the island in the last decades. These factors are causing the loss of habitats, mainly outside the special protection areas, but also disturbances within the sites themselves. Several factors such as uncontrolled tourism and the increased stocking of goats are seriously affecting bird life, particularly the Habara bustards. Additionally, the recent construction work of power lines and wind turbines have increased the number of accidental bird deaths. It's even worse in the rest of the birds range across North Africa, where Habara bustards are significantly reduced due to hunting by both falconers and hunters alike. It also doesn't help that their meat is thought to be an aphrodisiac. These birds are an endemic subspecies, being smaller and darker than their cousins in North Africa, but still taking the prize for being the largest bird on the Canaries. They once occurred on Tenerife and Gran Canaria, but have since gone extinct there. In 2020, an injured male Habara bustard was collected by wardens on the island of La Graciosa, north of Lanzarote, after it was attacked by another male. It was noticed to be underweight and so was nursed back to health, fitted with a GPS transmitter and released where it was found. Over the following months, it was tracked flying south over to Lanzarote. While it's long been suspected that these bustards fly between islands, this is the first confirmed report of this happening. Outside the breeding season, the birds may be gregarious, foraging in small parties. However, when breeding, males hold and defend individual territories for courtship display. During this period, both sexes tend to be solitary, only coming together for mating. Courtship takes place between December and March, with the male displaying his head and throat plumage while strutting in a straight line or circle. The female lays 2 to 3 eggs in a scrape on the ground between February and April. Males may mate with several females and don't help to rear the young. The chicks hardly spend any time in the nest, leaving as soon as they're able to walk, and accompany the female after hatching. Usually only one chick survives from each clutch. The birds are omnivorous, feeding on the ground and consuming a variety of arthropods, mollusks, and small vertebrates, as well as plant material. The chicks require insects in order to grow properly. And then as we sat watching from the car, the main reason I wanted to visit the Canaries in the first place suddenly happened, leaving me completely unprepared for what was about to happen, so I apologize for the terrible footage I managed to grab here. I was torn between filming, taking photos, or just plain watching it through my bins, but what an absolute pleasure to sit and watch this play out on the plains. One of my childhood dreams coming true, seeing a display in Habara Bustard.
We've got the bustard feeding literally in the road in front of us here. It's crossing over. Just up ahead here. It's just been giving us the most insane views. It's just had a nice wing stretch. I filmed it and Jake took photographs of it, so I'll post a few shots for you now. It's literally just on the verge here.
What a way to end an incredible day out on the plains. After having our fill, we decided to call it a day and head home for celebratory beer and some dinner before crashing into bed, making a last stop at the animal enclosures again in the vain hope of seeing something there. But sadly, because there's no livestock, all we could muster were a few laughing doves sitting on the wall as the sun set behind them.
This is day 4 of the birding holiday. A little bit more overcast today, a lot cooler. Jake's doing a bit of driving today. Frees me up in the back to scan both sides. Our aim today is sandgrass, or better views of sandgrass, but we'll take anything we can find along with those. Much cooler today. I've got my down jacket on, but it's still early, so first light, I'm sure it'll burn off still. All this overhead cloud. Lovely and still out on the plains this morning.
Amazingly picking up a male black-bellied sandgrouse shortly after entering the plains. Locally common on the dry plains of Fuerteventura, but scarcer on Lanzarote. They don't occur on the central and western islands at all. There's no confusing this bird, as it's the only sandgrouse present on the Canaries. The nominant race breeds from the Canaries into the Iberian Peninsula and northwest Africa to parts of Central Asia. At around 615 grams, it's likely to be the largest species in the sandgrouse family and has a far-carrying babbling flight call.
So I've just found this morning's first bustard, and it's very distantly out on the plain there. So we're just going to see if there's another road that goes around the backside there and see if we can get a bit closer. Otherwise we'll carry on and look for one that's slightly closer.
Our first bustard of the day appeared to be a female, lacking the long white neck feathers of the male, and also seemed less showy too, making a hasty retreat, so we let her go.
Okay, we've just been told by another birder that there's about 5 or so Habara bustard males displaying on the crossroads in the middle of the plains. So we've just come back into Tindaya and we're driving back out. And oddly enough, this tarred road that runs through the middle of Tindaya is far worse than the actual dirt tracks. So make of that what you will. But we're just now heading to the crossroads and then we'll scan around again.
Big one.
Quite a bumpy road that's full of potholes, and it's the only tarred one on the plains.
After a couple of kidney jolting minutes on the tarred road, we found the displaying male.
We've just stopped for a pair of cream-coloured coursers just on the ridge over there.
Initially quite distant, and because all the bustards had by now gone to ground and we couldn't find anything else to look at out on the plains, we thought we'd just take a break and sit in the car quietly and have a drink and a bite to eat while watching them feeding out on the plain. And wouldn't you believe it, just as we were getting ready to eat, the pair made a beeline straight for the car. You couldn't have made it up if you tried, which meant our food and drinks went flying around the car as we scrambled for our photography gear as they continued their sprint towards us. They caught us completely off guard. They just kept on coming. Eventually stopping right next to the car, allowing literally point-blank views of them, and at one point I was aiming my camera down at them, they were so close. I'm not sure how often this happens out on the plains, but we were completely blown away by what we were seeing. So I'll just let you enjoy them as much as we did sitting there with our mouths open wide in shock. They're lovely, aren't they? In total, we only ever had 2 pairs on the same day, and some days we had none at all. We did hear from other birders out on the plains at the same time we were, saying they had 4 pairs on the same day. Just shows you got to have a bit of luck on your side while driving around. And they also wouldn't be in the same place twice, so it was just a case of driving the dirt roads hoping you'd bump into them, and if they weren't feeding or moving around, you'd have little hope in finding them. I was also lucky enough to get this individual close to the car, showing its lovely dark underwing while having a stretch. After enjoying the courses for a bit, we decided to head out of the plains because it was starting to get hot and things were slowing down a bit. We were going to head north for the day. There were a few e-bird spots we wanted to check along the way, which meant yet another journey along the potholed tarred road, rattling the teeth in our skulls as we went, and of course leaving the plains because we thought the bustards had disappeared for the day. We then bumped into one right in the middle of the road.
It's just a bustard literally in front of the car here on the left hand side. Just sneaking up on it. It's got a Habara bustard here. crossing the road.
After a bit, we watched it walk off into the middle of the plains, so moved on, leaving the plains behind and heading to a small body of fresh water we found on Google Maps, just to the south of the town we were staying in La Oliva. It's the only freshwater dam we could find containing any water for miles around, and with a good-looking wetland surrounding the dam, it was bound to have some goodies for us. The dam itself was fenced in, but still allowed views in from the northwest corner.
So we've just come to the east side of La Oliva, I think it's called, the town that we're staying at. And this is the only sort of like body of water that's around. So we've just come to have a look. eBird said there were a few waders here in the recent days, black-winged stilt and stuff like that. So we're just going to have a little tinker around and see what we can see. It's all enclosed, but we'll just walk around the perimeter fence and peer in, see what we can see. That's the small town La Oliva that we're staying at. A couple of ruddy shell ducks on these muddy embankments there. There's one there and then another pair in the distance. And then we've got about 20 odd just sitting out just next to the wetland here as well. Only had a little glimpse of the water, the actual water. Hopefully we'll get better views as we move around.
Ruddy shelduck used to be a vagrant to the region, but has since become a common breeding bird, with flocks of up to 200 being recorded. There's been sporadic breeding on Tenerife and Gran Canaria. Their love of freshwater sites confines them to man-made wetlands, including golf courses.
So we're just walking the boundary fence of this little wetland. Had about 5 or 6 moorhen, and through that fence on the other side there, we've had black-tailed godwit and black-winged stilt, and a few spectacle warblers, Fuerteventura chat, loads of ruddy shelduck, but they've legged it at the first sight of our ugly mugs. There's another moorhen just sneaking out there now as well. So yeah, this is where there's water, there's life for sure. Unfortunately, there's a primary school behind us that literally had recess the minute we turned up, so it's pretty loud behind us. So in this little wetland behind us here, we've had 4 black-winged stilts, black-tailed godwit, green sand, loads of spectacle warblers around the edges, fly over hoopoo, ruddy shelduck. Yeah, so it's maybe small, but it's definitely productive because there's hardly any water, fresh water around here. And this is the only sort of marshy bit that we've come across. This is the wetland here, all behind this fenced-in area. Tiny, but very productive because it's the only freshwater source around. There's currently a mating pair of great grey shrike, subspecies for the canaries, on the fence here. And spectacle warblers in here. So yeah, small but very productive. We counted a single flock of 50 ruddy shelduck.
I mentioned earlier that ruddy shelduck prefer freshwater sites. However, having said this, we would often find a lone duck in the middle of the blazing desert in random spots looking completely out of place, but seemingly quite happy to be out in this barren landscape. And then back to the plains, but this time not to look for Bustard, but to head straight over to the rugged coastline immediately west of the plains to do a little sea watching there to see what we could find. But of course always birding along the way, finding this very confiding great grey shrike using the tall vegetation either side of the road to hunt from, and at one point I had the bird at eye level right by my open window. I think I had to zoom back a bit to get the whole bird in frame. There's about 12 subspecies, this one being the Conigi, endemic to the Canaries. The species is territorial, but likes to breed in dispersed groups. It's not known to what extent the birds in these groups are related. In good conditions, they raise 2 broods a year, and if a brood is lost early on, they're quickly able to produce another. These shrikes have incredible power, and reports of birds taking mammals as formidable as young stoats, and even birds much larger than themselves are preyed upon.
We've just come to the edge of the plains, where the plains meet the sea, just for a nice walk along the cliffs here. It's pretty wild and rugged. And then if you pan this way, it's quite desolate.
We killed a bit of time sitting on this cliff top doing a bit of sea watching. There was a nice onshore breeze, but it wasn't strong enough to push the tons of distant Cory Shield waters any closer than what they were, so I won't bore you with the horrible photos I got of them and just give you one as a record shot. Literally the only other birds we saw here were fly-over yellow-legged gulls. Our fifth and final day on Fuerteventura started with yet another early morning run out on the plains before heading to the airport early the next morning.
Just got our third bustard of the morning just out there. As the sun's making an appearance. Tends to be cloudy in the morning, and then the sun burns all the clouds off. So the bustards are always on show early morning and late afternoon, and then tend to literally disappear during the course of the day.
We found the female Habara bustards never stuck around like the males did and were always on the move, just like this one was. Habara bustards are made up of 3 subspecies, and there's archaeological evidence that indicates they have been present on the Canaries for about 150,000 years. However, genetic data points to a more recent split from the nominid subspecies around 25,000 years ago. This suggests that there was an initial colonization of the islands 150,000 years ago, followed by a second around 25,000 years ago, with continued isolation until today. We finally found a lovely female that wasn't in a hurry, so watched her feeding for a bit. Males are much larger than females, weighing in at around 2 to 3.2 kilograms and standing between 65 and 75 centimeters tall, while females come in at 1.2 to 1.7 kilograms and 55 to 65 centimeters tall. After enjoying the display in male Bustard, we drove north to El Cotillo and onto Toston Lighthouse to explore the various rocky coves and long sandy beaches just to the east of the lighthouse. We left the Tindaya plains in the northwest corner via the Barranco de Esquinzo, stopping for a bit to do some birding before the Barranco widens out into open plain again on its westward journey to the sea, finding a lovely trumpeter finch in the rocks here. Trumpeter finch are widespread and locally common on Fuerteventura and Lanzarote, and getting scarcer on Gran Canaria and La Gomera, and thought to be totally lost on Tenerife. They love open plains, rocky areas, and agricultural areas close to villages. And then onto the seaside town of El Cotillo. The Toston Lighthouse, built in 1897, stands guard over the Bocana Strait, which separates Fuerteventura from Lanzarote. It stands at 30 meters tall, and its light beam can be seen up to 17 nautical miles out to sea.
Just stopped at this little bay because there's a wombrel out on the rocks there, and further towards the back a little egret. There's tons of little egrets along the rocks around here, but this is the closest to the lighthouse after we stopped there. Just did a quick scan. There's not many other waders on the rocks. That's all we've found so far.
Wombrel are one of the most common waders on the Canaries, especially in the winter months when their numbers are bolstered by migrating birds. They are easily recognizable by their long downward curved bill and brown and white plumage. The aptly named red rock crab of the Canaries is native to tropical eastern Atlantic coasts, including West Africa, Ascension Island and the Canary Islands. Further down the beach we bumped into this mixed flock of waders happily feeding together. It was made up of sandling, redshank and turnstone.
Just walking around because we've got two spoonbills. We've got the spoonbill and a little egret, and a spoonbill on its own.
Spoonbills visit the Canaries in winter and on migration. Wintering birds prefer the central and eastern islands. From ringing records, most come from Holland, but also from France, Denmark and other European countries. The yellow-legged gull, specifically the Atlantic subspecies Atlantis, is a common sight across the Canary Islands. This gull is a subspecies of the wider yellow-legged gull, known for its yellow legs and red dot on its bill. While the broader species is found in southern Europe and the Mediterranean, the Atlantis subspecies is particularly associated with the Canary Islands, Azores and Madeira. The Atlantis subspecies is known for its slightly darker back plumage compared to other yellow-legged gulls.
That's the lighthouse we were at earlier. It's quite a nice rocky shoreline. This we've walked all the way along. Got spoonbills, turnstones, sandling, redshank, wombrel, yellow-legged gull, common sand. Yeah, and I think Jake's found something over there which he's busy photographing now.
A new bird for our trip list. Kentish plover on the Canaries have experienced significant declines in recent decades, with the bird disappearing completely from Tenerife and nearing extinction from Gran Canaria. The majority of the breeding population can now be found on Lanzarote, Fuerteventura, La Graciosa and Lobos, but human activities such as habitat degradation, beach tourism and disturbances from vehicles and pets are putting pressure on its survival.
We've just come up to this bird of prey rehabilitation centre, and it's quite wooded, so we spent a bit of time just walking around the perimeter fence. There was a report of a long-eared owl here from eBird, but we've scanned all the trees and it's definitely not here. But in the process we've picked up a chiff-chaff, a collared dove, song thrush, plain swift, Egyptian vulture over, buzzards, and along with the collared doves we had a nice clear Barbary dove as well, which was lovely to see. Nice bright bird. I'll pop up photos now for you. Yeah, a nice little catch-all with these trees because there's not much trees around. There's Jake walking the perimeter fence without me, and we had a massive flock of about 15 plain swift over, which was nice to see as well. Sadly, no long-eared owl. Right, sadly, this is our last Habara Bustard outing. In the afternoon, we fly to Tenerife tomorrow to chase all the pigeons and all the endemics on that island. So hopefully we'll find some bustards to enjoy this evening.
Which of course meant driving on our fabulously potholed favourite tarred road one last time. We would have the most amazing views of Habara bustards this evening, in perfect golden light, starting with this lovely female bustard, and ending with an amazing displaying male later on, which turned out to be the perfect ending to our birding on Fuerteventura. So I'll leave you for a bit to enjoy these amazing animals, before we head to the airport birding the East Coast golf courses before we flew. And with the sun setting on our amazing time out on the plains of Tindaya, we couldn't have asked for a better send-off than to see another male Habara Bustard literally displaying off into the sunset. And then unbelievably, just 4 days later, the plains looked like this. This amazing footage was filmed and kindly granted for use on my video by Antonio HS. It shows him out on the plains exactly where we had been just days before, but now under a foot of water. I'm very grateful we missed the freak storm and subsequent flooding, as we would have had a completely different experience, and maybe might not have had the views we did of all the amazing plains animals. Our sixth and final morning on Fuerteventura was spent with us up and out early doors to see what we could find around the golf courses immediately south of the airport, birding right up until the last minute before our flight to Tenerife.
Right, so we just, it's the morning of our flight to Tenerife, but we thought we'd just pop down to the golf courses to see if we can have a look at the water. There's not much viewing here, unfortunately. We're just on the perimeter fence, but we've had black-winged storts, common sand, ruddy shell duck, turnstone. Yeah, so there's a little bit of water. This is the southern golf course. We're going to go and try the north golf course as well and see if we can pick up 1 or 2 additionals to the trip list. But the viewing's quite limited, unfortunately. So this little golf course dam here, little lake here, which is half dry, is pretty productive. Turnstone, sandling, LRP, yellow-legged gull, ruddy shell duck, black-winged storts, green shank, which was new for the trip list. Yeah, not a bad little stop. Okay, we've just found a bit of time before our flight, so we've come back to the golf course lake, and since we've been away we've had about 4 or 5 barn swallows and 2 house martins arrive, which are both new for the trip list. And then in addition to that, we've had a flock of swift over and 2 distant hoopoe on that side. which are addition to what we saw earlier.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we fly across to Tenerife to enjoy some volcanic terrain and lush forest birding.
Oh shit, the window's closed. That's f***ing hilarious.